Welcome back to the podcast, Present and Powerful, Omnipresence in Leadership and in Motherhood. Today's guest is Melissa Froehlich. Melissa is a business strategist, mentor, certified mindset coach, and Kolbe certified consultant who integrates human design principles to develop personalized strategies that align with her clients' natural strengths. She is also the CEO and lead strategist of Salted Content Studio, a marketing and messaging firm designed to create powerful and sustainable visibility for her clients. Drawing from her transition from Fortune 500 corporate leadership to entrepreneurship as a military spouse, Melissa built her own successful consulting business while moving across the United States with her active duty Air Force husband. When she's not working with clients, Melissa spends her time with her husband, her daughter, and her dogs, making sourdough bread, gardening, or relaxing on the beaches of Northwest Florida and Mexico. Melissa Froehlich, I am so excited to have you on the Present and Powerful podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be here.
Me too. It's kind of comical that among my many friends who I'm connected to in the business world, very few of them live within a 45-minute radius of me. And I think I'll be seeing you for the second or third time in the series of years that we've lived here. Next Friday, I'm joining you for your retreat in the beautiful Destin area. We're very, very lucky to live in such a great place in terms of beauty. So you have your retreat coming up. You have been running a coaching business for many, many years, and you've recently launched a new marketing company. So how are things going, my friend?
I mean, just like a crazy whirlwind of excitement and the, seeking harmony in it all, but it's going really well. And I'm excited to share more about any and all parts of that.
Me too. I love kind of rewinding the time because it's really fascinating to see where we are as business owners and business leaders in the present tense. But there's so much that has happened in the years that many of us have been doing this. And it all started probably from a series of events that led to choosing entrepreneurship. And I don't think that was always your path. So can you talk about what spurred the creation of your business and how it led you to here?
Absolutely. It all started with falling in love on eHarmony back in 2015. And I had no idea what I was stepping into when I met my thankfully now husband, who's a fighter pilot. And I had a really, really amazing, cushy corporate job. I was jet setting the world and just climbing the ladder, and the world was my oyster. But you know how it goes when you meet the one. And so I ended up giving that up and moving across the country from Boise, Idaho to Goldsboro, North Carolina to follow his career. And I thought I would just get another job. I mean, to be quite honest, I'm early 30s and highly marketable and ambitious and all the things, but a lot. And I mean a lot of failed attempts to land another corporate career because of being overqualified or finding out that I was associated with somebody in the military. And so they were looking for longevity and blah, 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 all the things. I was like, there has to be another way. And so entrepreneurship in this sense, this version of it was kind of like a necessity in a way. I knew that I wanted more than just staying at home. I love that for lots of people, but I knew that that was never going to be enough for me. And so I wanted to continue pursuing something that was going to fulfill me in terms of career. And so I started exploring how could that look different in a way that was going to be portable and flexible? And the very first thing that, came to mind was blogging. And I'm like, I don't even understand blogging back in 2016, and I don't want to do that. And so it was just starting to get curious and do a lot of exploration. And ultimately, I started in the online space as a virtual assistant, and I was making $12 an hour. So I went from nearly six figures in corporate, which was a lot at the time, to $12 an hour. And I was totally fine with it because I wanted to learn and I wanted to see what was possible. I got a taste of what kind of felt like a secret society or, this hidden world. And so it was kind of just history from there. But it all came from needing to fulfill something deeper while also exploring what my future was going to hold. So it certainly wasn't a well mapped out plan, my friend.
No, there are many twists and turns and pivots and unexpected realities that come up whenever you do choose this route. And I totally agree. Whenever you work in a traditional setting or a corporate setting, this was my experience. I had no idea the online space and the opportunities, the community, the culture, and certainly it's pivoted and like drastically evolved over the years. But it was an eye-opening experience whenever I went from must be in an office, must be in your pencil skirt and heels, must be in your seat from 8 to 7 or 9 to 5, however you want to look at it. And then the freedom to choose and to explore business on your terms. It was very eye-opening for me. And what many people don't know about the military spouse community is that the unemployment rate has been at 24% for more than a decade. And so I hope that lends to why it is so challenging for military spouses who are ambitious, who are hardworking and very successful whenever they either become part of the military community or the military life changes their trajectory. It's because their autonomy and authority and having choice over their geography, their home, how long they're somewhere, or even the perceptions in the community, so challenging to navigate. And I think it's such a beautiful outcome, especially I know this has to have been hard fought, Melissa, to go from where you were in corporate life, navigating unemployment or underemployment, however you want to describe it, and then starting out from what I will assume is at a lower income level at $12 an hour, but like seeing so much potential. So from $12 an hour to a multi-six-figure business to where you are that now, I have been able to see over the years the unique aspects of your business and the true impact that it makes on entrepreneurs and business owners, because what you do is you take someone's natural strengths and how they can create a business that naturally aligns with their lifestyle and their natural strengths through human design. And again, I've been a recipient of that work, and it has completely changed how I view my business. So can you talk about the nature of your work and how you serve your clients today?
I'm so passionate about what I do now because I wish desperately that I had had a version of me when I started. I think that any woman who comes into the entrepreneurial space has true grit. I mean, that is part of what is the DNA of an entrepreneur, but that can only get you so far. And I felt a lot of times like I was swimming upstream, or I was doing all the things that quote unquote they said that you should do, like following the blueprint to a T, or applying the steps of this program. And it just never felt like I was getting as far as I should based on the amount of effort that I was putting out. And so over time, just curiosity and awareness helped me really become very, very aware. The way that I was designed to operate was unique. And I mean, that sounds so obvious when you say it that way. And we were talking about this a little bit before we kicked off, but it's not until you experience it. And then it's really obvious. And then you want more and more and more of that. And so I started to really realize that the more I poured into learning about my own way of doing, and I started building a business model and offering services based on leveraging my unique strengths and more importantly, figuring out what those actually were, because we tend to really downplay the things that we're inherently great at. And it wasn't until that really started to be the forefront of my effort that things started to finally shift. And then I started realizing that this, of course, was how I was supporting my clients. I never went into a session, even in the early days of coaching, to be like, you have to do X, Y, and Z. I always came with curiosity to find out what's important to them. How did they measure success? What are they really good at? What did they love doing? And what did they really dislike doing, right? And so then over time, I experienced a lot of different awareness tools, which is what I will call Kolbe, human design, Enneagram, anything out there. And I really fell in love with some of them more than others. I love them all. I'm an awareness tool junkie, probably like many of you. But what I learned very quickly was they just became another thing that sits on your shelf unless you really understood how to apply them. So fast forward to now and present day and how I coach my clients, and I really focus on leveraging the data that human design, which is an energetic blueprint, and it's very, very, very unique to the individual. And the information that Kolbe gives us, which is a cognitive assessment, it shows us how we are going to exert energy when we're striving, when we're putting forth energy to get something done. Not when we're doing something for fun, but when we're really putting energy out there. And how are we going to act? How are we going to behave? And then with that information and that data, I start to really create specific strategies to be able to guide people towards what it is that they desire, their definition of success. What are we going to work towards. So yes, I'm a business coach and a consultant, but it's all anchored in the individual. It's very, very bespoke, customized strategies that's based on data, right? I am the anti plug and play cookie cutter business coach. And I mean, lots of people say that because it's trendy, but I really practice what I preach in terms of that. And the work is never done. And you're nodding your head because you know that. And it's like, the more that we know, the deeper we can go and continue to really optimize what we're creating and ultimately then the impact that we're making.
I've followed your business for years. And then I think a year and a half ago, I really started to understand I need to align my business with my natural strengths, with that energy output, with what feels good, because who knew, sustainably speaking, that is going to allow for longevity. It will allow me to honor my family and really pursue the gifts that I have and to share those with my clients in a way that, again, feels good. And I'll just speak from my experience. I can remember our conversation when we were having this before the intensive that we had a year or two ago. And I think I said something to the degree of like human design, it feels very like woo-woo, like so woo-woo. And you're like, well, it's not really woo-woo. Can you give someone who may not really understand human design an overview of what it is, how you determine your human design, and why that matters?
Yeah. So I have shared that same sentiment, right? I was first introduced to human design, I think in like 2016. And I was like, it's so overwhelming and it's weird and I don't know what it is. And so again, I just kind of like pushed it aside. And then it just kept coming back into my life in different ways. And then finally I experienced it and could really see how incredibly accurate it was. And so I'm like, all right, I'm curious about this thing. So human design is ultimately a synthesis. It is fairly new in terms of its origin and how it's being incorporated into business and life. It's widely used in Europe and Australia. It's becoming more popular here in the US, but it's ultimately a blend of ancient Chinese wisdoms, the chakra system, quantum physics, kind of all wrapped up into this incredible blueprint. And I've used that word before because that's what it is. You actually, when you do your human design chart, you get a blueprint. It's literally going to be your own unique design. They're not going to be two people that are exactly the same, even identical twins. There's going to be some very, very small nuances. So it's really incredible. And is a combination of, I mean, really what you need to know, and there'll be a link in the show notes. I'm sure you can go and do your chart right now and it's totally free, but you need to know your birth date, your birth time, as close as you can get, right? If you're like, my mom doesn't know for sure, but I was born in the evening. Okay, that's close enough. We'll use 6 p.m. And your location, because there are two sides to a human design chart. There is the design side and the personality side. And the side that is indicated by the time that you were born, like Earth side, there's also the other side of the chart, which happens about 88 days prior to birth. So while you're in utero. So again, if you're into origins of things, go read about it. I love to use the analogy of the Farmer's Almanac. Like the Farmer's Almanac is incredible. It's accurate, but like, where does it come from? What's the origin? Who really knows? It's kind of obscure, but we don't care because it works and it helps us keep our plants alive for longer. So human design's a little bit like that. But again, if you love to do the research of history of things, go for it. You can read all about Ra Uru. But human design looks very, very complex, and it is. There are tons and tons of layers in terms of the embodiment piece. It takes the average person who's really fully working on embodiment of human design 8 years. So if you work with somebody who understands human design, I mean, one teeny little piece of it can be something that allows you to make massive, massive shifts in your business. So yes, it's a lot, but it also can be so pivotal so quickly.
I can attest to that. And it's almost a jarring process to go through, because I remember whenever we sat down, one of the first questions you asked me was, are you sure you gave me your birth date correctly? Because I think I had been showing up as either like a manifestor or a generator or something. And I am, in fact, a projector, a mental projector. And that means something totally different from the people who do and they go, and their energy levels are so different. And it took me not only being told from your side, like, hey, this is what this design is telling me. Let's talk about responding to, or let's talk about looking at this and then I don't know what the proper term is, but like you almost have to rewire your thinking of what you should be doing. And this is societally, right? Like I should be doing X, Y, and Z. I should be doing things that way. This is the blueprint that so-and-so gave me. I should be doing it that way. And it was totally out of alignment with how I should be showing up and exerting energy and leaning into my strengths. It is an evolutionary process and is something that I think of literally daily. Conditioning myself has been really difficult, but also so rewarding. Like I think you call it like, I'm giving you a permission slip to X, Y, and Z. And for me, it was like, I needed that permission slip. I needed to know that I can do things differently and still be successful. And oh, what do you know? I'm actually more fulfilled and feel better through working this way. So it has been a life-changing process, and I think I'm still learning about it. But one of the things that you do in addition to that is you marry that with the Kolbe assessment and the strengths in that way. So can you talk a little bit more about Kolbe and why it's such a great pairing for human design?
Kolbe measures a different part of the mind. So we have 3 parts of our mind, not our brain, of our mind. So we have our cognitive, we have our affective, and we have our cognitive. The cognitive are going to be the things that we learn, our IQ, strengths, skills, we can continue to grow our cognitive strengths and our cognitive abilities. The affective is going to be where our feelings and our values lie. And so the Enneagram, for instance, measures the affective part of our brain versus going back to the cognitive. We're going to measure that with like an IQ test or the Wonderlic assessment. And then we get to the cognitive part of our mind. And this is about our striving strengths. So how do we naturally, when free to be ourselves, exert energy? The only assessment that exists anywhere is the Kolbe assessment. And so I love it because it's kind of like the overlooked piece of the trifecta. And everything I do is holistic, right? From the way that I look at health, from the way that I approach business growth and planning. So this was essential. When I realized this, like, oh, there's this whole piece of our mind that we're not even considering when we're looking at business growth. You betcha I'm like, roll up my sleeves. Again, I was first introduced to Kolbe in 2016. One of my clients, I was a business manager for him. He was a certified Kolbe consultant. I was like, I don't know what this is. It's overwhelming. I don't get it. I'm not going to apply it. But thankfully, he kept bringing it in a practical, applied way. And I was like, oh, this is a game changer. Again, little teeny tiny shifts that made big impact over time. And so that became like, I have to understand this on a deeper level because I want to incorporate this into my work. So again, gives us a whole different subset of data that is really, really important to really understand how are we naturally designed to exert energy when we are doing work, when we are building things in our business, when we're marketing, when we're selling, when we're serving our clients, right? And so then we couple that with any of the other assessments. But in my case, I love the human design piece. And so it gives us a really, really holistic and kind of like 3D view of a person. And aside from that, again, everybody loves an assessment. And when I can hand them something that is literally their own data, it makes my job so much easier because I could tell them the same thing for months on end. But when I give them that piece of paper and it's on there, they're like, oh, this is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you that. But then we can do our work so much faster. So I work predominantly with women, but I also have quite a few male clients and they love it because it's just like, okay, I'm bought in. Let's figure out how we start to optimize, make shifts. So just a different viewpoint that gives us more data about how we are uniquely designed to operate.
The phrase that really opened up the door whenever we worked together was when free to be yourself. That was a permission slip in itself. And I think so many of us don't honor that guidance. And as you mentioned, you've worked with a lot of people over the years. And I'm curious, can you talk about some of the transformations or shifts in business? What are some of those aha moments that you experience and help bring your clients to through this work? Because I love that it's holistic. I love that it's big picture. And I don't think we'd be able to be as successful in business or do what we do without that holistic picture.
I can tell a lot of stories, but a very recent one comes to mind. She was a very, very successful dietitian with an incredible group coaching practice and a successful blog, and also a wife and a mom of 2 kiddos under 5, and she came to me really wanting to figure out how to scale. And so everybody comes with something, right? And I love that. But also, I don't really care about what your goal is until I really know who you are, how you're designed to operate, and what's important to you, like values and your definition of success. Then we're going to talk about where you want to go, because that's all going to determine how we're going to navigate it. But what happens a lot in my work, and this will probably like scare a lot of people, is they come with a goal and I'm like, yeah, that's not going to be the thing that we end up achieving together, right? Once you, again, write that permission slip. And so in this client's case, we're talking about wanting to grow her business, wanting to scale, really wanting to get to the 7-figure mark, but about the 6-month point of working together, because most of my private clients, we work together for like 1, 2, 3 years. I mean, a lot of long-term work. It's not the only way that I work with people, but it ends up being that because they're like, okay, I need to go deeper and I need to go deeper. So about the 6-month mark, she starts to really realize that maybe making 7 figures isn't really what's important to her. Maybe it truly is giving herself permission to be more present as a mom and really not miss that time with her kiddos. And so again, a lot of this deconditioning, right? Realizing how much conditioning has happened. Again, through all this work, we're talking about the different ways to scale and what we can do, but where is she exerting the most energy and feeling exhausted versus what truly lights her up? And so fast forward to 1 year together, and she completely shut down her super successful group coaching program because it wasn't filling her cup, right? Was she good at it? Was it making money? Yes, yes, yes. But then we really started to get granular and look at the numbers in terms of profit margin and also, energy spent, like I've already mentioned. And like, that's not the best use of time. If we take it into this other bucket, also, she's a manifesting generator, being able to be multi-passionate, super important. She hadn't been pouring into her blog. That's what she was missing. That was going to allow all of these other opportunities. And so it was like 1 year later, the goal was no longer getting to 7 figures. It was maintaining a really healthy multi-6-figure business with a big profit margin and a big margin of white space to be able to make more time for her family. And one of the last things we did in our last session was really map out her summer and being able to block off time so that she could truly have the life that she wanted. And so again, it was a big like lifestyle first permission slip. So she felt like such a failure and a fraud at first to be able to say, or to admit that I want to have more freedom, but I feel guilty because I already have so much freedom and I'm not working this corporate job anymore and all these things, right? And so it was like really, really flipping the narrative. Also, so it's mindset work coupled with like, this is how you're designed to work and you get to build it however you want based on that knowledge. And so now she's like ecstatic with a multi-6-figure business, being able to be more present with her kids and giving herself permission to be multi-passionate, which as a manifesting generator sometimes means trying things out and not finishing them, right? So anyway, that's just one story, but that one kind of embodies a lot of what I've been experiencing over the past couple of years with women, where they come with this big goal of wanting to make more money. But once they start peeling back the onion, they're like, actually, that is not what I want. But I've been too scared to say that because it feels like failure. And then it's building the new relationship with how to look at what you're creating and being like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for what's next. And it looks so different from what I first wrote on that intake paper.
Which really speaks to the work is never done notion of this is not just a 6-month sprint and X, Y, and Z is going to be the outcome. It is a long-term commitment to personal growth. And yes. I think what's so fascinating about your business, your gifts and your strengths is that you pull together the human design, the Kolbe, the business strategy with the mindset. And I think I would assume many women in our space do have a lot of mindset blocks. Can you talk about the importance of mindset and maybe what you also help your clients navigate with in reference to mindset?
I'm going to make this about me for a second, only because I want to speak to the fact that I continue to do the work. And this isn't something where I'm just like, I'm going to be a mindset coach because that sounds amazing, right? I am a certified mindset coach, but that is because, again, I realized that mindset was this whole thing that I didn't even honor in about 2 years into my business. And I was like, ooh, a lot of people that I respect and deem as quote unquote successful they pour into this thing called mindset, and especially specifically abundance mindset. And what does that actually even mean, right? And so my own journey is what led me to go deeper into wanting to understand like NLP and a lot of different modalities in terms of mindset work and incorporate that into how I guided and provided strategy for clients. And it was such a game changer. And for me, an example would be, I had a lot of money mindset things to work through. But if you had asked me that, do you have any money blocks? I would be like, of course not. Like, no, money is great. But a specific example of scenarios that were showing up as mindset blocks or issues that I needed to work through, limiting beliefs. When I first got certified as an online business manager, kind of early in that journey of virtual assistant growing really quickly and then finally figuring out that consulting and strategy was my gift and my path, I was booking a lot of discovery calls, and that was exciting. And I almost got addicted to the discovery calls in the sense that I realized that I was really, really good at sales. Even though I would tell myself that I wasn't good at sales, I was really good at converting people on discovery calls. And so I started falsely measuring my success by whether or not I got an engagement as a result of a discovery call. And so what happened is, because I was good at the conversations and I was good at getting people on a call, and I could help anyone and everyone that was coming to me because I was booked out with a wait list, which sounds really sexy and cool, of a whole bunch of people who are not my ideal client. And so I was like quickly on the path of bordering burnout. And what does this have to do with mindset? It's because I had a lot of narratives going on, and things that my dad used to say to me. And I love my dad to pieces, but this is how it shows up in business. Like, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right? You never know where the next opportunity is going to come. So beggars can't be choosy. Like things like this, where it's like, ooh, I have somebody who's willing to invest in my business services. How can I pivot what I offer to meet their needs? And I was the queen of like, sure, we can do that. And then going behind the scenes and making up a whole new contract or proposal to meet the needs of the person who had just showed up. So anyway, it was the realization of abundance mindset is what I did not carry into those calls. And so that transformation allowed me to really step back and say, is there a values alignment here? Is this going to be a case where I can grow with this client, and really have a different litmus test of deciding if this was a yes for both of us. But it was because I was driving from a place of scarcity versus a place of abundance. And it wasn't until I dove into the mindset work that I could even recognize or see that. So I think that that's just one tiny example, but you can see how deep that goes on so many layers. And I continue to have to do mindset work every week of my business, right? You aren't immune from imposter syndrome just because you've been in business for more years. It just shows up differently, but we can squash it a lot faster. Like, that's the beauty of it. But circling all the way back to your earlier point of the work is never done. I mean, it truly isn't, but it is such a valuable investment in time that we as women especially aren't taught to even give, 2-second glance mindset work. Like, that must be for the, multi-million-dollar Fortune 500 CEOs. No, it's for you, and it's for me, and it's for all of us. So big fan of it.
Do people mistake confidence as having a good mindset? Like, is there a correlation there?
Yeah, 100%. It's usually a false confidence is what I find, right? People think, and I heard it all my life, oh my gosh, you're like the most confident person I know, right? And I'm like, I have so much self-doubt around X, Y, or Z, or whatever the thing might be. But then you start to hear things like that, and you're like, confidence looks like just showing that I have it all together, versus we know that that's not what it actually feels like. And so I think that the places where we feel incredibly confident and we're just like, oh, I'm so confident here, when we start to really get honest with ourselves around it, there's massive opportunities. But it comes back like very resilient as a true form of confidence when you start to poke holes in it and I don't like to say fix, but really optimize the things that could use some support, right? And then you're like, oh, this is true confidence. I think there are plenty of people who are just really confident, but it's usually not women. I mean, if I'm just going to be really, really honest, we have to do more mindset work. We really, truly do, because we don't also have a lot of times the luxury of time to sit down and really work through things. We are the queens of juggling all the things at once, especially, moms and wives and all the hats that we wear. And so the last thing that usually gets any energy and attention is our own self-development. I've never met a person who couldn't benefit from mindset work. If anybody tells you that they don't need mindset work, I mean, like, that is like, they're flying all the red flags.
That's why I asked, like, I have confidence in X, Y, and Z. I feel certain about this and that, but the mindset it's more than those things. So do you have any advice or recommendations just generally across the board for how women in our community who are hardworking, ambitious entrepreneurs, their moms, their devoted spouses, like in terms of mindset work, what would you recommend to people who are in the thick of business right now?
I mean, literally, if you have not read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, I go buy that on Amazon right now. She's kind of the queen of mindset work. And I love her stuff so much because she speaks from a place of not only becoming an expert in the field of mindset, but also realizing all of her own work that she needed to do with herself. So that book changed everything for me in the sense of that's what made me really aware of the fact that I had a lot of mindset work to do. And so if you feel confident in something, let's say that you're really confident in sales, right? That can still be correlated with a limiting mindset, instead of having an abundant mindset. Because if you're confident in sales, you're saying that today's confidence is the end of my potential, right? So then when we bring the abundance mindset in there, it'd be like, oh, but what else is possible? How much further can I go? How much better at this can I get? How much more fun can I have? What are different ways that I can then when we bring an abundance mindset into anything, it's just going to make more possibilities for growth if that's what you desire, or ways of solving things, or whatever it might be. So I think that as women, as people listening to this podcast, the number one thing, even if you start going out and buying anything, what you can do right now is be really curious. Be curious all day in terms of, how are you speaking to yourself when nobody's looking? What are you saying when people compliment you? How are you responding to your kids? Notice where you're showing up with abundance mindset versus a more limiting scarcity mindset, because mindset is not universal. I don't get to have an abundance mindset, period. I may have an abundance mindset with marketing, but a very, very scarcity based mindset when it comes to my self-image, for instance, right? And so all different areas of our life and business can have different levels of our relationship with our mindsets. It becomes really, really amazing when you just simply infuse curiosity. So when I teach mindset for the first time to anybody, it's I just want you to start getting curious. I just want you to notice where you're ooh, what else can I learn, versus where do I not even want to look at the thing because I don't want to deal with it.
Ooh, there's some deep work and self-reflection in that notion of being curious. And specifically when you said, what are you saying to yourself? What are you saying to people who compliment you? That struck a chord for me, because anytime someone compliments me, on my clothes or this, I'm up on sale at Target, or kind of downplaying the compliment. Yeah. And it's such a natural thing, but why? There's something back there.
Yeah. I find that most people that I work with that are women are really, really bad about celebrating themselves, celebrating wins. That tends to be some work that goes on with every single client. It's how are we activating the reward center in our brain so that we get more used to celebrating the wins? Because all that's going to happen if we do this are good things, right? We're going to say that we're capable of doing hard things, that success comes to us more frequently and more naturally. We want to celebrate the wins, but instead it's do I accomplish this? What's next? Right? How many of us have been in that cycle for far, far too long, or downplaying it, or be yeah, I mean, I did it, but yeah, it was no big deal. When really you're I just sweated through the last 3 weeks, being able to really reward yourself personally for just through acknowledgement is going to change so much in terms of your confidence, right? You are going to sit up differently on podcast interviews and during sales calls, or when you are in a networking meeting, because you've been working on giving yourself that tiny praise that you deserve for your efforts.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that is advice that all of us should take, no matter how confident we're feeling, no matter how long we've been in business. And that book will be one of the ones on my nightstand next. And as we kind of talked about the number of things that you're kind of doing in present day, retreat, business strategy, you just launched a whole company, the Salted Content Studio. So Melissa, let's dive into that. What spurred the creation of this new company?
Oh, man. Really following my sacral as a generator, finally, is really what it comes down to. And that's all human design talk. So don't worry if you're like, well, what is she talking about? But really, I love helping people feel more confident and show up more confidently in every way. But one of my gifts is helping people articulate what they do, who they are, and also shine a light on the things that they aren't saying that they absolutely should be saying. And then from a very sustainable perspective in terms of, okay, here's what you need to do and say more of, and here's how you're going to do that. And so I struggled with it for a long time because I'm like, I'm not a copywriter. I don't want to be a branding strategist, right? And so again, a lot of imposter syndrome was standing in the way of me just like doing the darn thing. And it took me being at a mastermind event in New York with a bunch of peers that honestly I had never met before. I knew one person in the whole entire room of 8 women. And as we got to know each other over the days, are like, why are you not doing this thing that you're so passionate about? Because in the work that I do through the coaching and consulting, it always comes back to now, how do I show up as this version of myself that I've finally claimed and given permission to shine brighter, right? And I think I have yet to meet somebody that's like, love being more visible. It's like the easiest thing in the world. It's like your genius in terms of PR, right? It's like this, it's so needed, and people, you change their life. And so this was just really an extension of what I was already doing, but it's also a little bit of like, how do we work with what already exists in your business or that you've already created? Because one thing that I know to be true, and this is kind of what sets Salted apart, is we really look at how do we leverage all the goodness that already exists. So I work with a lot of, coaches and consultants and service providers and dietitians, people, educators, people that have material, and they have this pressure of like, I need to create more content, whether it's blog posts or email or shticks for networking or whatever. And I'm like, hold on, you need to create more of anything. Like, how do we use this gold mine, this treasure trove? And how do we also look at data to see what is resonating with people? And also, how do we look at like, what's fun for you to do more of? And so it's a bit of reimagining the relationship with marketing, right? How do they see marketing, and giving them kind of a path forward of what they can do more of based on what they like to do, what are their strengths, and then help them realize they have a whole bunch of assets that they can leverage, and what can they create more of without just starting from scratch? Because nobody I work with needs to start from scratch, even if they tell themselves that. So it really was just a really obvious extension of the work that I was already doing, but something that I could separate from just the Melissa Froehlich brand, which I was really, really desiring to do for a number of reasons. And I needed a creative outlet, and I didn't know what that was going to be. And finally, when Salted was kind of like wrapped up in a little ribbon, it was like, this is the thing. But it truly took being with other women who could see me in order to bring it to life. And so it is literally everything I believe in, right? I was making it harder. I was working against my strengths by trying to figure this out myself. And as a generator, especially putting myself in the room with people that I could respond to because they were asking me questions and like sorting it out. We literally got the entire brand developed in the kitchen of a cabin in upstate New York, from the colors to the title to the trademarking, everything, because experts in the room. But I could go so fast as a generator because I had these people to respond to. And so like, if I can just leave everybody with one thing today, and I know that we're not wrapping up in this second, but like, don't try and do business alone. Like, it is way harder. It is totally the epitome of working against your strengths, right? And even if you're a projector, even if you are a reflector, like whatever, doing it by yourself is always harder. So anyway, that doesn't like totally concisely answer your question, but I think it's kind of some fun backstory of like, where'd this thing come from?
Oh, but it gave so much more, because there were a lot of really hearty tips in that. And it is, one, investing in yourself and your business. Two, surrounding yourself with equally ambitious and aspirational individuals, and also diverse individuals with different levels of experience who want you to win and can help move you faster if you get yourself in the room. So I think yeah, all of that. What I am curious about, and honestly, Melissa, I'll just say, even since you've launched your company, and I've followed you on social media through Salted Content Studio, in my mind, I'm like, all right, Lyndsey, you should be repurposing some content. Like, why are you going to sit over here and spend 45 minutes creating a reel on something you haven't talked about when you could just pull the 45 other things that you have in your project management software? So I do think that you stand apart so well because you're like leading in with, let's repurpose, let's be mindful, let's not start from zero, and build something that feels good.
Yeah, I want to just share this one other little tiny story that just happened this morning, because I think this also paints a picture of how we overcomplicate and how we can make it simpler. So I just had a call with one of my clients this morning, and I know her pretty well. We've worked on and off together for 5 years, right? Not consistently, but I know her well. And she really wants to grow her business, is what she tells me when we come together. But it's our third private call of this session, and her homework literally today, when I used to be a teacher, so I say homework a lot. I'm a very action-based coach. You will get action items if we work together. I can't help it. I'm giving you action items right now. But she really was telling me all of these things that she wanted to do, but her homework was quite literally, all right, I want you to go get new branding photos, because what happened as we were talking about her blog, which she wants to do more blogging. And I was like, do we really need to do more blogging? Or let's look at what's performing really well and let's leverage that. And she has a real aversion to creating content on Instagram, even though that's where the majority of her leads come from if we have to pick a social media platform. So I'm like, we're not going to create more. She could tell me right away, oh, this blog does really well. And I was like, okay, great. Let's see why it does well. Anyway, we went down this path of, she knew exactly which blog she wanted to make that would leverage that further. But she was like, I'm going to tell you right now, I know why I won't post the blogs, because I don't have any pictures of myself I like. I'm like, perfect. You're going to have a mini branding shoot and you will do that within 30 days. I lovingly push you off the diving board. I can't help it. But anyway, that piece, but then also she told me she wants to grow this business, but really what needs to happen, she's a manifesting generator. This business is a well-oiled machine. We talked about how to further optimize it so it truly leverages her capacity right now, what her values are, and what she truly wants to do. And I'm like, we don't do any more with this. We change it to a project-based model, and it's a living, breathing being. And the way that you're going to grow is through additional revenue streams, which then we talked about journals that she was going to create in a book. And those things were already all out there, but she was telling herself that those were just simply passion projects and she didn't have time for them. So today's call was very we're going to grow, but we're not just only growing from this business. And here's how this is going to funnel in. And so another one of her homework items was literally to map this out, all of her different revenue streams and what the action items were. So that is based on what her values were, what her capacity is, and ultimately what her strengths were in business. And so I hope it's okay that I share that, because it's very practical, very real time, but I'm not going to come and say, you want to grow your business, here are the steps X, Y, and Z. It's probably never going to look like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally am a very big fan of homework and action items, because this is very much a flaw of mine, but I'm aware of it. I am more likely to do something if someone is holding me accountable to do that thing. And that's why so many of us, I think we hide behind the success of our clients, because we are fulfilled through helping other people move the needle in their business. And therefore, it took me 4 years to have a website. It took me 4 years to be public on Instagram. And that was because I did not have someone saying Lyndsey, you're going to lose out on X, Y, and Z, saying, if you don't do this. And so investing in coaches who lovingly push you off the deep end to say, if you want to get from here to there, if you want to achieve X, Y, and Z, this is what has to happen. And oh, by the way, we're going to talk about this again in 30 days. I would encourage you to have that done, period.
Yeah. And then the accountability and the check-in and really knowing the person, right? I think that's what I love and what I enjoy so much is I want to know who you are as well, because that's just going to allow me to do deeper work to get you where you want to go.
Absolutely. With the launch of your new marketing agency and in sync with all the other business priorities that you have, where do you see yourself, your businesses 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, Melissa?
And this is a hard question. And I think that the short answer is I have no idea. I'm excited to see how and where it evolves, but like doing exactly what I'm doing right now for the next 5, 10, 15 years, like that's not going to happen. A version of it, absolutely. But I have really given myself permission to evolve with my clients and with my own seasons of life. And I just see that continuing to happen at even a more accelerated rate. Like, I mean, big dreams, right? Someday when we settle down, knows what that's going to be. I would love to have a retreat venue. I love hosting retreats. It is something that I am really passionate about and I'm really good at. I'm just going to say that I am. I'm good at throwing a party. And I would love to be able to do something where, you know, I had my own farm and I harvested my own vegetables and made my own salads. And it was very experiential, but we worked on business things as well. Like that's a real dream of mine. I'm not sure that I'm done in the retail space either. Something that a lot of people don't know is I used to have a holistic dog boutique before I met my husband. And my daughter is 7 right now. And she has, for the last 3 years, said that she wants to be a dog groomer when she grows up, which what she means, so that we're clear about this, is she wants to have a mobile dog grooming business, right? And have multiple vans. And that's partly because we've always had our dogs groomed by a mobile groomer. But it's the funniest thing ever. She has a real passion for entrepreneurship. And so we continue to have these conversations about what that's going to look like. And apparently I'm going to be washing dogs for her is what she thinks. My point is like, maybe that's not done. And I would love to grow fresh cut flowers and have a little, you know, farm stand at some point. Like, but will I always do some form of like coaching and consulting and professional development? Absolutely, because I'm really, really passionate about it. Not to mention that leadership is quite literally in my life's work in human design and Gene Keys. And so it's always going to be there. I know to be true is it's going to continue to evolve because that's where it gets rich. That's where it gets fun. That's where it gets exciting. And that's what sustainability looks like to me. But it will always continue to honor family first and freedom first. And so I've given myself the permission slip not to have any formal plans and have it be rigid. And so I hope that this is inspiring to somebody out there to be able to be like, I don't have to have it all figured out. This lady just rambled off a whole lot of things that she might want to do. Like, I want you all to continue to dream because there is no blueprint except your own that's going to work for you.
Beautiful. And so freeing to hear that. And frankly, whenever you do have this retreat venue where we get fresh Melissa made sourdough bread and salads and a beautiful floral arrangement for breakfast every day, I count me in. I will be there. One of the things that I think is really important to bring context to in these interviews, these podcasts is that like business happens, we're growing, we're thriving, but it's such a piece of our entire life. And you've talked about being a military spouse and you're a mom. And so I'm curious over the years, as you have navigated these various shifts and seasons of business as a business owner, how have you navigated that as a mom and a military spouse, specifically in the realm of like childcare and your own personal like wellness and filling your own cup?
My own personal wellness and filling my own cup. Always something I can do better at. Just been working on that again. Last week, actually found a really exciting functional practitioner that is a military spouse that can deal with TRICARE, which all of those things, holy moly, to actually find somebody. Anyway, never done a super great job at caring for myself. That could always be better. But in terms of how have I navigated it from a mom and a wife standpoint and as a military spouse, I think one of the biggest things is like I have a really supportive husband. And quite honestly, military life, as we know, can be really, really frustrating. But one of the things that I will be forever grateful for is the fact that because of the security of his career, it allowed me to take a chance on entrepreneurship and really do what I wanted to do. But it also took a lot of support from him to be able to say, go for it, because my own scarcity mindset that I didn't even know how to identify that really held me back in the beginning. And I also will say that if you have the privilege of being an entrepreneur and you're a military spouse, sometimes that can really hold you back because the security will keep you from taking the risk. So be curious about that. Are you playing it safe because you can versus what if you had to keep the lights on, right? That's always something I like to sprinkle in there for just curiosity purpose. But generally speaking, I'm a pretty private person. We've had some really hard seasons of life with some medical challenges with my daughter, which ultimately led to, having to homeschool and out of necessity. Luckily, that was really in alignment with our values as a family and it worked out fine, but it did put a lot of strain on my ability to have the level of bandwidth I maybe imagined having or desired to have in my business. And a big portion of, the revenue that I generated went into childcare because I still had to have nannies in order to be able to run my business at the degree that I had committed to in some of these seasons. So, I had to work through a lot of that in terms of maybe I didn't have as much money in the bank, right? But it was that a true measure of success because yet I got to have my daughter home and having the very best environment for her at the time and also being able to have the very best care possible, right? And that wouldn't have been possible without my career and without my efforts. And so I had to do a lot of work and a lot of mindset work throughout a lot of those seasons to really recognize my own growth and my own accomplishments instead of just getting lost in the hardness of it all in the day-to-day. But I think that it's important to remember that the people that are truly successful that you likely respect also are navigating hard things. And vulnerability and finding your tribe of people is going to make your own journey that much more incredible. I continue to refine the people in my circle. And that's probably something that I would encourage everyone to do. Like, you're not for everyone. Everyone's not for you. And that's one of the permission slips I wish I had written myself earlier on, was to not try to be for everybody else. I'm becoming less and less of a people pleaser. I'm a recovering people pleaser. And yet that's a hard journey, right? And there's a lot of conditioning around that, especially as women. But be firm in your values, be firm in what's important to you, and make sure that you are taking care of yourself in the very best way that you can. And that may not always be to the degree that we want, but honoring your inner circle is also taking care of your mental health.
Oh my gosh, so much sage advice that really applies no matter your level in business or motherhood, but certainly something to hopefully reassure and guide people who are probably at an earlier stage in business or an earlier stage in motherhood who sees this as not being attainable and not knowing how to navigate it. Before we depart today, can you tell us where we can find you outside the podcast, whether it is your channels or your new business's channels?
Yes. For whatever reason, Instagram is just always the easiest, and it is me that will answer the DMs. So you can reach me at Melissa Froehlich _biz, which it's impossible to spell. Lyndsey will have it in the show notes, or at Salted Content Studio on Instagram as well. Facebook's fine. I just am, for whatever reason, on Instagram more often, but that is where I typically hang out. If you send me a DM on LinkedIn, it will probably be some weeks. So don't take it personally. That is the affective preference of my mind. So I'm honoring it.
Knowing oneself. And I think that has been the true gift of knowing you and working with you, because whether it is intentional or not, whether it's in person or not, I feel so many permission slips written. And no, I think it's weird to say that we need permission slips, but man, it is so gratifying and like reassuring to hear someone say, you don't have to do it the same way everybody else does, because you're not made the same way other people are. You are different and you are unique, and building a life and a business that honors that is really critical to fulfillment and longevity. So I'm just really grateful that you were able to join today. I know there are going to be a lot of really great insights that people pull from here, but I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.